Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our third public lecture series of the think tank 2022. This month, we have a great honor and pleasure to have Mr. Kavi Chongkittavorn. He's a veteran journalist from the Bangkok Post. He has written widely on the regional affairs, including ASEAN. As you know, the think tank 2022 was established last year to promote peace dialogues, reconciliations in the Asia-Pacific regions and the world at large. And the think tank 2022 Asia-Pacific Secretariat was also established in order to support the vision and mission of the Universal Peace Federation based in Seoul, South Korea. So today's lecture, we will investigate the current development in Myanmar and the peace building efforts in Myanmar. And also the role of ASEAN in engaging different stakeholders in Myanmar in order to promote peace dialogues, humanitarian assistance, and hopefully to restore normalcy and democracy in Myanmar. So I would like to invite Mr. Kavi to share with us his perspective on the current situation in Myanmar. Mr. Kavi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Chheang Vannarith. I'm very happy to be here to give a latest roundup, I would say roundup of the situation in Myanmar and also the role of ASEAN and particularly Cambodia. And with such opening, I also would like to thank Asia Vision Institute for the invitation. I think it's very important today that we discuss the situation in Myanmar because the world today, as you know, the war in Ukraine overshadow whatever happening in the rest of the world. We have conflicting area around the world, in particular within our region. Today, my lectures, I will focus on 4 key issues. Can you start the PowerPoint just so that our audience can see? First of all, can you do the PowerPoint, change PowerPoint? Yes. The first one, can you move up? I would discuss the situations and prevailing tensions in Myanmar first and see how the response from ASEAN and also the member country, particularly neighboring countries. I will focus on Thailand and then I will, in the end, I will discuss the significance of Cambodian ASEAN chair. The next slide is the current situation in Myanmar. The current situation in Myanmar is very bad. Some analysts have even went as far as saying now it is a civil war. I would not go as far as that, but I would say that the situation in this particularly dry season is very fierce and is for very specific purpose because the intense fighting between the resistant force, particularly PDF and the Tatmadaw have been very feisty in northwest and southeast and other area. Later on, I will show you areas that of heavy fighting and the area which at the moment have big problems of internal displaced person. And the fightings now has killed a lot of civilians. Number has have valleys, but the associations of assistance for political prisoner have give the number 1,603 as of latest figure I got. But I think the death of civilians and a lot more unaccounted for. And as you know, if this situation continue as today, but I think it will die down because in our region, during the dry seasons, conflicting party always use the dry season to fight each other to gain territorial advance. So I think when the rainy season come, maybe at the end of May, I hope rainy season come early this time, because it would force conflicting party to sit down and recalculate, reassess their strategy. Because if this fighting continue at this rate, there will be major problem. One of the biggest problems, not to mention increased internal displaced person, it would be the public health condition. As you know, people still need a lot of medical care, and the impact of COVID and its variants is still very much prevalent inside Myanmar. And very few people know that a lot of vaccine came from donation from neighboring country, from India, from China, from Thailand, and from international NGO recognized by Myanmar, and also some of the local ones. But the overall vaccines, I must tell you, the COVAX, the international program that distribute affordable vaccine around the world under the management of the WHO, I think does not include Myanmar, but it does include countries like Afghanistan, Yemen, Sudan, which also involved in similar situation in conflicting areas. And I just call some of my friends. I was a former editor of Myanmar Time before the worst thing happening. You know, last year I was there in 2017 and early 2018 as the chief editor-in-chief of Myanmar Time. At that time, it was considered the best time of Myanmar. Myanmar was open economy. Everybody was very optimistic of the prospect of this very rich nation with natural resources. We were very excited. But now, everything turned upside down. Economic situation is getting worse by the day. Although you can go out and get things you buy, but things are getting more expensive. One of the things that is a good indication is that there are a lot of people wanted to cross to the Thai border. I think there are very similar situations in the other countries, but I think at the Thai border, I can observe on TV and some from social media. So I think one of the problems that we have is to make sure that people waiting there, stay there, and then we try to help as much as we can. And I think that's the situation that gives us a very pessimistic view of the situation. And I think at this juncture, Chheang Vannarith, the scheduled election, which the State Administrative Council has pronounced earlier on last year in August 2023, that's about less than 17 months away, would not be possible at all given the current situation, unless there is a ceasefire pause, unless there are some sort of informal dialogue with some of the key moderate member of NLD, which is currently inside Myanmar. And I think this is the ongoing situation. So I think the current situation in Myanmar is not a good one. And I'm quite concerned if this thing continues, it will drag on and cause more misery to the people of Myanmar. Can I have the next slide, please? Hello, can I have the next slide? The next slide is just want to show you where the internal displaced person. This is the UNSCR latest as of February 14 slides. 14 slides. You can see up top the number. If you look at the top corner, Myanmar in sky, you will see that there are a lot of displaced person, and then look down a little bit downward in Kayah State, and then move down toward the Thai border. In Masot, Kanchanaburi, you will see a large number of the internal displaced person, which according to the UNHCR, it's around 450,000. Next slide, please. This is again from the UNHCR, just give you the trajectory of the current internal fighting between the resistant force and the Tatmadaw is on the increase, because as you can see, the dramatic rise of conflict of that have driven the internal displaced person is very high. So I think this trend will continue until the rainy season comes. Please, next slide. I would like to discuss the ASEAN role because it's very linked to the future of the region and the settlement of Myanmar. And I think ASEAN realized that ASEAN as a whole need to work this out. It will take time. We have to be patient. I was unhappy as someone who followed ASEAN for a long time. I have to defend ASEAN. ASEAN is a very organized, is an organization that has a very strict rule, very strong institutional structure. And ASEAN member, ASEAN chair, ASEAN leader, sometimes they speak out with different opinion, but in the end, they will form a consensus. Even that consensus being criticized by others as the lowest denominator, but nonetheless, some of these initiatives, if they are carried out completely, they would be able to provide solutions to imminent problem. That explains why ASEAN agree on the 5-point consensus last April. A lot of criticism from the NGO, from those who want to see much stronger reaction from ASEAN. I think ASEAN has done the right job, has done a very good balanced approach, even though a lot of criticism from Myanmar people who suffer and Myanmar people want more action. And I think the 5-point consensus is a good start because we need to jumpstart somewhere. And the language that contained in 5 points consensus were good enough to jumpstart. But as you can see, even that, still the progress has been very slow. It was slow, of course, for various reasons. One of the main reasons is that the SAC in Naypyidaw has not yet complied fully with the implementation of 5-point peace plan. Of course, there were many reasons. a justification that the military junta in Naypyidaw could not follow. They accept the 5-point peace plan, but they have not yet concretely totally implemented. And I hope this situation will improve in the future. And I think we have to watch carefully because as everybody knows, it has been announced on March 20th to 23rd, the special envoy of Cambodia, of ASEAN, the Cambodian chair, is, all three combined. The Cambodian chair is also ASEAN chair, and also the special envoy from Cambodia's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Prak Sophon. So he's visiting Naypyidaw. This will be the first time, almost over a year after the quagmire. I predict that there will be some concrete progress which can discuss what would be the concrete progress from his visit. I think his visit is very pivotal. It will mark a new important step toward the resolution, toward some form of limited ceasefire or dialogue so that humanitarian assistance could be provided, vaccine could be administered for those who need it. And as I said earlier, that Myanmar crisis is an ASEAN crisis. As an organization, ASEAN will have to solve it with its own wisdom and whatever methods that we have on our hand. Of course, with the full support of the international community. And when I refer to international community, I do mean the United Nations. United Nations has been very good and very supportive of ASEAN because the UN needs a regional organization to complement the UN activity and program because the region organization know their region better and they can help strengthen. I think this is a wonderful things to do. And luckily, also member of the key dialogue partners, strategic partners of ASEAN are also very supportive of ASEAN. So ASEAN must take the lead. ASEAN has taken the lead. It will take time. So I think outsiders need to carefully assess ASEAN role and give support whenever we need it. And I think one thing that happened after the retreat, just in the middle of February, was the announcement within the joint statement that Special Envoy on Myanmar from ASEAN and the UN Special Envoy on Myanmar, Noreen Hazer, will work together to facilitate whatever that is needed to help ease the situation in Myanmar. I think that is a very, very trend because this synergy is very pivotal for long-term and sustained humanitarian operation because ASEAN does not have the capacity to, I would say, to manage this huge scale of humanitarian operation. Judging from the Psychonakis experience, you need all the help you can from international organization and international civil society organization. So at this point, ASEAN will try to do what ASEAN can do is try to make sure that all involved stakeholders would be able to follow ASEAN 5-point peace plan. And that is the most important because one of them is a cessation of all violence. And I think this is important. And I think we have to wait until the outcome of the visit, which will come in next week. Next slide, please. Now, one of the countries that's most affected, of course, is Thailand, but there are other countries as well. You have China, Bangladesh, and also India. But since I live in Thailand, I have much more knowledge of what the situation along the Thai-Myanmar border on the day-to-day basis. I would like to discuss with you the situation in Thailand at the border, because any conflicts does not restrict on the country itself. It has ramification towards other neighboring country. Just look at what's happening in Ukraine and surrounding country in Europe. In the case of Thailand, we have almost 2,400 kilometers common borders with Myanmar, and they are non-demarcated. So there are a lot of the so-called, the Thai use the word Chongkittavorn Thamachat. They call it natural channel. That means nobody on guard, no checkpoint. There are plenty of them because at the moment there are 6 official checkpoints along the border that officially open, and some of them are temporary. So I think this causes problem for Thailand because the constant influx of persons fleeing conflicting area, especially during the dry season. In the beginning of the dry season, early December, the attack of the Tatmadaw against the Korean opposite Thai border caused a great shock to Thai, because that was the first major attack by the Tatmadaw, and it caused great concern that there would be possible future influx of person fleeing conflict. So Thailand then has to prepare, and many international organizations have offered to help Thailand, but Thailand said that it could still handle the local situation. Temporarily shelter was set up. I have to emphasize temporarily shelters were set up because already a lot of people didn't realize that there are still nearly 100,000 Myanmar refugee, long-term refugee, which has been residing along 9 camps along the Thai-Myanmar border, which are waiting for repatriation. In fact, before the conflict, before the COVID outbreak, Thailand and Myanmar previous government has cooperated very well and have repatriated successfully nearly 900 family, which was incredible. But the whole program had to stop due to the COVID. And now with the current situation, I think it will take some time to resume because we have to manage the immediate problem at the border. And besides the influx of refugees, of people free in person, and the residing remnant of previous conflict refugees in Thailand, we still face a huge dilemma how to take care the guest worker from Myanmar. We have around 2.5 million guest worker in Thailand from Myanmar. That was official figure. I would contest that figure. I think informal figure would be around 4 million. 1.7 million have been registered with the Ministry of Labor. That was a very good one because the registered guest worker will receive benefits, social benefit, including medical care, fully under the Thai law. I think that's very good, but I hope that we have enough resource to cover all the Myanmar guest worker in Thailand. This is a big issue in Thailand at the moment. Thailand now is moving to declare the pandemics as epidemic, so that we are ready to open up the country. So extra care has been placed on the Thai Myanmar frontiers. And I think this is a very delicate situation. During the first week after the military takeover last February, the Thai government was shocked because there were sizable of Myanmar diaspora inside Thailand organized demonstration in front of Myanmar embassy along Sathorn Road. The Thai government was shocked because they fear that this could spiral into a bigger demonstration and then divided the resident of Myanmar people inside Thailand. Fortunately, I can reiterate now that that fear was unfounded. And I think the guest worker, the diaspora, and also students and all the Myanmar people living in Thailand have been very cooperative, and they go along, try to live their life, make sure that the situation of their daily existence is guaranteed. They are quite worried. I have talked to some of the guest workers. They need, some of them get the shots. They need booster shot. And I think the Thai government trying to cope with that. At the moment, as you know, Thailand was one of the 25 countries that have the license to produce vaccine from AstraZeneca. So Thailand now is producing nearly 5 to 7 million a month vaccine, so that it can administrated not only to the Thai but to foreigners, especially guest workers from Myanmar that live in Thailand. So I think we need a delicate balance between our relations with the SAC, which have improved over the past 15 years. I mean, Thai relation with Myanmar used to be very problematic. And I think Myanmar and Thai from both sides of the border were raised with all the stories about hostilities, about battles, after battles between the two countries. But I would like to tell you now that Thai-Myanmar relations in the past 15 years have normalized, have become very good and functional, both the civilian and the military relation. So Thailand, big dilemma and big problems is to make sure there is a balance between the various sides of Myanmar, both inside Myanmar, along the border, inside the camp, and inside major city in all over Thailand. And if you visit today, I'm happy to tell you that you will see Myanmar guest worker in major department store, restaurant, and food court. You can see tinaga or their smiling faces. They can work without fear of arrest. I think that is a very good trend. So the Thai situation in Thai Myanmar is a good indication and a good illustration of how difficult we have to do. I think a country like India, Bangladesh, and China also have similar problem, but maybe of different nature. This is how Thailand engage as a peace, try to build up the peace, make sure that the situation inside Myanmar remain calm. At the moment, I can tell you that Thai would like to make sure that humanitarian assistance would immediately go to the internal displaced person inside Myanmar to prevent them from fleeing to neighboring country. That would give extra challenges to neighboring country of Myanmar. Next slide, please. Now I'm coming to the last part of my lectures. I would like to focus on Cambodian ASEAN chair, which has been the most talked about in the news. I have to give you a little bit of background because as a journalist, I was lucky enough to be the first ASEAN journalist to be stationed in Phnom Penh during the war in 1987. So I was there. I have seen the situation in Cambodia every day, and I have come to appreciate the spirit of Cambodian people. That I would like to discuss the concept of Ka Ruop Ruom. Ka Ruop Ruom in English is a very dull translation, togetherness. Because one of the heart of Ka Ruop Ruom is hearts and mind. It's not the physical presence like togetherness suggests. It's much deeper. I would say that Cambodia survived the war. It's because the conflicting party realized that they have to come together. Ka Ruop Ruom is a very good way to do that. So I was not surprised that Cambodia main theme of this year is ACT, you know, acting collective together. So Ka Ruop Ruom will provide the trajectory, the pathway from Cambodia to lead ASEAN under its current chair. And Cambodia is a small country. I would state once again, Cambodia is not afraid of engaging great power. Cambodia, from its history under King Sihanouk and also under the current leaders, they engage great power and speak out. Prime Minister Hun Sen indeed speak out his mind so that we can gauge what is the bottom line of ASEAN thinking sometime. And of course, a lot of people have been criticizing the role of the chair ahead of the retreat. Now I think no more, because after the retreat, Cambodia have taken up full control as the ASEAN chair with support consensus from ASEAN. So as the current chair of ASEAN, Cambodia is in a very unique situation, unlike any other. Even though it was the last country to join ASEAN in 1999, Cambodia has a very long experience involved conflict situation because it was engaged in one 13 years and were able to survive, allow international communities to engage. This has been used as a very good example of how international community with full cooperations of the local authority could produce countries that now rising and rising in the lower income sooner will graduate from this category. And one thing I noticed, this is my own take, that is under Cambodian chairmanship, there are more informal consultation among ASEAN leaders. Prime Minister Hun Sen called Jokowi, President of Indonesia, called Sabri Jacob, Prime Minister of Malaysia, and Singapore, as well as other leaders. I think this kind of casual, informal conversation increased the togetherness, การรวบรวม at the top. And you know, this is very important because ASEAN is a top-down organization, particularly when it deals with crises, such as as you can see, dealing with economic crisis, rehabilitations of post-pandemic. All these things come from the top, and then with assistance from bottom-up process from the NGO and the organization involved. I think that is one unique, and you can see that there will be more consultation because Prime Minister Hun Sen, he's open to new idea. He dare to challenge. I use the word copy from the James Bond movie. James Bond, when he ordered drink, he said, "Chicken, but not stir." I would like to reversing the phrase saying that Cambodian chair today like to stir but not chicken. Try to rejuvenate the ASEAN process a bit, and I think he did it well during the first week, you know, of his visit. It was an icebreaker, even though the ice was pretty big one, but he successfully. And I think we have to wait what would be the outcome of Special Envoy visit. And I think one of the most important elements is also, this will be the third time that Prime Minister Hun Sen will chair ASEAN. So he understood, aware of the do's and don'ts. So you don't need to tell him. You don't need to tell Hun Sen. Hun Sen realized it. He will follow ASEAN consensus, making sure that it runs because ASEAN consensus help Cambodia. That's what Cambodia has come this far, because of ASEAN consensus. So I think it will be a good lesson for Myanmar to follow Hun Sen's advice, because it would be very useful for the future. And also, one of the other characters is that you can talk to Hun Sen anytime. You can talk to him anytime, just like Hun Sen calling ASEAN leader anytime. There is no protocol at all. And I think that is very good. And this will help in the future when there's certain action, certain program that need quick decision. I think that would help. So this will be the gist of what I like to inform our audience about the latest situation inside Myanmar, which is, I would say, very sad because of the intense fighting, but it has not yet reached the level of civil war, but it could if it continue. And I hope that the situation in the near future, by the end of May or June, when the rainy season comes, each conflicting party will have the time to reassess the condition. And I hope they would agree that this fighting will not win, no one win. The loser will be the Myanmar people, so that they would start coming together, sitting on a negotiation table, so that peace dialogue can start. And I hope that ASEAN 5-point peace plan will progress, and I hope that it will progress steadily from the cessation or even a pause of ceasefire, so that humanitarian aids will be delivered to the most affected area, and country like Thailand, neighboring country, or neighboring country can help with the logistic for the humanitarian. And that is why neighboring countries' stability and awareness of the people, including in the case of Thailand, Myanmar guest workers have to understand the dilemma of the host country, why sometimes it's in the catch 22. And I hope, lastly, Cambodia will be able to carry out its chair effectively without any prejudice. Of course, we talk only Myanmar, but you must understand that Cambodia have a lot of priorities under the 3 pillars: the political security pillar, the economic pillar, and the social and cultural pillar. And being Cambodia, Cambodia also want to add more spice to the meeting summit this year. There will be 2 extra meetings, as you know. The Global Dialogue Forum, which is very good. I remember in 2012, I attend the Global Dialogue, but at the time, we invite key prominent leaders to address the forum. This time around, I think it's more diversified. And also there will be summit for women leaders. As you know, Cambodia is the country that women playing a very important role. So all in all, I would say that situation in Myanmar will be one issue that Cambodian chair will engage fully, using its long-term regional and international experience to help ending the conflict. And most importantly, I think Cambodian chair want to create the so-called the element of trust, so that they can come together. การรวบรวม need trust. And I think ASEAN now, after the retreat, realized that the leader must get together more often, have informal consultation, trust each other, and then that trust will be ricochet toward other parties so that they can work together. And I have full confidence that Cambodian chair can handle the situation in Myanmar effectively with cooperation from all stakeholders. Certainly, it will not be perfect. There will be some hiccup along the way, because this is the conflict situation, and you are dealing with the most diversified conflicting area in the world, I repeat. And ASEAN has the courage to take up the responsibility. And I would have to remind you again that when ASEAN accept any task, it cannot step down or forget it or just leave it. No, we will see it until toward the end. Thank you, Chheang Vannarith. Sorry for the early hiccup because of the electricity cut. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Kavi, for very comprehensive and so also very insightful lecture on the current situation in Myanmar and the role of ASEAN, the role of Cambodia as the chair of ASEAN in providing or facilitating this kind of platforms for peace dialogue and reconciliation. You mentioned the word ការរួបរวម togetherness, which is one of the key kind of elements of ASEAN community, ASEAN unity, and ASEAN centrality. In Cambodia, we also use the word Kap Sapsa, referring to reconciliations. So they tend to use these two terms together, Karup Ruom and Kap Sapsa, reconciliation for peace dialogue. Because as you mentioned, trust is very important. So without trust, we cannot have any conversation or dialogue or produce any meaningful or substantial outcomes from the dialogue. So trust is very important. And in addition to trust, I think we also need to add the term confidence. So all the party concerned need to have a certain degree of confidence so that they can compromise, because negotiation is the art of compromising. All the parties need to make concession. This kind of mutual compromise will lead to win-win kind of outcome from the negotiations. So I would like to pose several questions first to you, Kun Kavi, with regards to the Myanmar political crisis, humanitarian crisis. First, with regards to the stakeholders analysis in Myanmar. So can you name political groups or organization or individual that are the key stakeholders in promoting this kind of peace dialogue in Myanmar? That is the first question. So maybe you can respond to this question first. Thank you.
Well, as far as I know, you have an organization that already exists worldwide. That is the Red Cross Society. The Red Cross Society in each country, even inside Myanmar and also Thailand, and cooperating together. I think that is important because they are helping to alleviate the hardship of the people. And I think there has been a lot of criticism about giving aids to some of these local Red Cross in Myanmar, but I think it's very important to do so because Red Cross is considered neutral, even though at the moment it's under, in the case of Burma, it's under the military control. But I think they have very good relation. I think that's one key organization. Another organization that I have heard, besides the UN that has been there, that has been helping, is Japan Foundation. Japan Foundation has been very low profile because, as you can see, some of the assistance, for example, if you follow the news closely, last month, Nippon Foundation, I'm sorry, I mean Nippon Foundation, have given 20 million doses of vaccine. So that is one of the role of the international NGO that have been played to provide. And I hope that this kind of activity will expand to other international NGO. Many countries have suggested that we should use the formula, the so-called tripartite committee, the Myanmar, the international organizations, and then ASEAN working together to help with the humanitarian crisis to help. But I think this model is getting difficult because Myanmar has learned the hard way that during the cyclone Nargis, too many international organizations inside the country, they could not control, I'm sorry to say. So it has been an obstacle. This is why Myanmar has been very reluctant. I think the only organization that will be able to help, I hope that in the future it will be UN, but for the time being, trust must be established between ASEAN with the Myanmar government and our AHA Center, the ASEAN Center that helped humanitarian assistance. AHA Center is very important, but AHA Center has a big and huge challenge because it does not have enough personnel to help, doesn't have enough human resources, and budget is very low. So we need a lot of help. Some key member like Australia, Japan has provided immediate cash to help. I think this will be the starting point, and you will see that. I am confident, but I'm predicting ahead of time that when Special Envoy of ASEAN finish his first trip to Naypyidaw, he would be able to have some form of guarantee so that we can start deliver in large scale humanitarian, particularly vaccine, to most affected area. So there must be some careful arrangement, and I think ASEAN chair would discuss and find out and try to find consensus what to do next. So AHA Center will be next, big things. And then if AHA Center can do the job, we can expand that to involve other stakeholders, particularly UN. Chheang Vannarith, if you read the joint chairman statement, you will see that for the first time, ASEAN said that the special envoy of Myanmar and the special envoy of UN must work together. And this is very good. And I think I found out that it was the contribution of the Thai who asked to insert this. And it's very good because, as you can see, the joint statement, Chheang Vannarith this year on Myanmar, longer than the usual regional issue, 3 paragraphs, That's very long. Normally, it's only South China Sea. So you see the priority, and Cambodia set the priority, right? So, but first, ASEAN must get the working framework that help humanitarian, engaging AHA Center with coordinating group from both sides, and then involve UN in a large scale. I hope that would be the kind of step, but I don't know, because this is a conflict situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To follow up on this humanitarian assistance, as you may recall, the Cyclone Nagis, before the opening up of Myanmar, the ASEAN played critical role in this, and there's some suggestion that with regards to humanitarian assistance to Myanmar this time, it needs to be more innovative, actually to avoid being manipulated by the Tamadao to gain legitimacy, for instance. So there's some suggestion with regards to we need to have this more innovative humanitarian assistance to Myanmar at this time. So what do you think is it should be different from ASEAN support to Cyclone Nagis decades ago?
Well, I think this time the crisis is different because the crisis is about help more than ever. You have COVID-19 that is killing people, and also you need vaccine, not to mention other things. I think food is important, but food could be a problem because food can serve as a powerful weapon. It can be sold to exchange for arms. So I think for me, medicine and vaccine is the most important. I think Myanmar is a very rich, abundant country. Food security is still good because it has Irrawaddy Delta. That I think would be the most important. So well-coordinated international community over providing vaccine is crucial, very, very crucial. And then of course, other assistance will come later. And I think another way is to make sure that we can establish a corridor, humanitarian corridor, but that you need some agreement from the SAC. And I think there have been some discussion, but no agreement. This kind of a humanitarian corridor is important so that it's safe, can go toward the most affected area, and also it shows the confidence of stakeholder of conflicting party but it must be carefully administrated because you involve many groups that need help. So I think this kind of approach will help. So it's not like the Nagis, which is of course is the large scale disaster and it need immediate, and the government at the time and also ASEAN was ready. So I think it's a different situation, obviously.
Thank you. As you know, women and children are mostly affected in times of crisis, war, and conflicts. So any suggestion for ASEAN and the United Nations to do more with regards to the support of women and children in Myanmar?
I don't have any particular ideas about this because my focus is on Myanmar people as a whole. Because Myanmar as a whole, including children's relative, because they tend to move around in a group. For example, during the visit to the border area, you seldom see one person coming alone. Mostly they come with the family. If they come alone, mainly young people. So I think when you help the family, you help everyone. You should not focus on children and women alone. You should focus on family, because family mainly the mother who will take care of their children. So I think safely to say assistance must be given to the Myanmar family, because they would take care of their children and all that. Once they've been taken care, I think things will improve.
Thanks. Other question relating to coming back to the role of ASEAN, as you mentioned earlier. There's a kind of criticism as well as some praise with regards to the role of ASEAN in dealing with the Myanmar issue. Your assessment has been quite positive with regards to ASEAN, and also Cambodia chair after the retreat. You found the retreat as a success, as a great step forward in dealing with the Myanmar issue. Of course, ASEAN is facing the problem of institutional capacity, limited resources, perhaps to some extent lack of leadership, and to some extent unity within ASEAN. So of course, I think a lot of people argue that Myanmar is a litmus test for ASEAN, whether we survive and thrive and move forward together in the sense of togetherness depends very much on the success or the effectiveness of ASEAN in dealing with Myanmar. So let's put in this way as what are the key indicators that we can use to assess the role of ASEAN in Myanmar, one, and to assess the role of Cambodia, the success of the Cambodia chair. What are the key indicators for us to make any assessment on this?
Well, thank you, Chheang Vannarith. To answer your question, I can write a full thesis on this. But I will answer first. Marathon runner, when you determine the marathon runner, you have to determine on the strength, the consistency of the runner. So ASEAN has that quality, consistency as a marathon runner, slow but sure. But a lot of people could not handle it because they want quick action. But ASEAN learned that. So people criticize, even within ASEAN, but it's okay. I could understood, and I wrote in my article that this thing will disappear after ASEAN get together during the retreat. Before the retreat, you are free to say whatever you want, as a chair. Now everybody agree and accept that the chair decision is a consensus of ASEAN. That is the beauty of ASEAN. That's one thing. Another indicator is that ASEAN, when the ASEAN take up any issue, it takes a long time. For example, Rohingya or whatever problem. But one ASEAN said, hey, we're going to help you. ASEAN will help you until the end. We never retracted. Of course, sometimes it's imperfect. ASEAN is not a military organization. ASEAN is a 10 country, the most diversified. I used to say that ASEAN is Disneyland of all political culture. Where can you find the most dynamic political culture in the world, except in this region? All the political system, whatever you found, it's all in ASEAN 10 member country. We are very colorful, and we survive. And that should be the big plus for ASEAN. So I think in the future, you have to see that ASEAN ability to survive, to avoid being used as a pawn for hegemon will continue. Now, your last question is the roles of Cambodia. I mean, I observed Hun Sen when he was very young. Now, you know, I met him nearly first time 40 years ago. So it has been a long time. I saw him progress. Now he play golf and speak English. Before he wear tongs, you know, very down to us as usual. He speak his mind. And that kind of leadership at this moment, you know, ASEAN is very strange because each chairman has his own personality. And each personality has certain issues, just like EU. You know, now Macron under the chairmanship of EU. So during the first 6 months, very strong. But under Cambodia, Cambodia will be very informal, very open, you know. And as I said, I don't think any person has mentioned yet, under Hun Sen, consultation at the top will be more often and freely, so that you can create a sense of togetherness, not only on the same page, but will act the same. I would say that from now on, that kind of solidarity will be able to visible more and more. You will see more of that after Sok Sopon's visit to Naypyidaw.
Thank you, Kun Kavi. So I summarize your response in 4 C's. Right? You mentioned consistencies, communication, consultation, and consensus. So these 4 C's perhaps make ASEAN resilient and effective organization. Of course, it's a bit slow, but at least it maintains consistencies and this consultation and consensus. Connecting to this question, there's a question relating to the visit of Special Envoy. It would be the first visit. You also wrote in your latest piece on the upcoming US ASEAN Special Summit and other articles lately on Myanmar issue in ASEAN, that the Special Summit will take place by the end of this month. Again, we should expect to see some criticism with regards to the outcomes of the visit. And I would like to pose this question similar to the previous question on how you define a success of the visit of the Special Envoy or the work of the Special Envoy.
I think the Special Envoy's visit is considered already a success because he already visited the country. He will be meeting with the SAC and all the other stakeholders, which has never happened before. Listen carefully. I was told, but has yet to be confirmed, that is there will be a member of the NLD which resides in the country. This still, as you know, SAC still recognized the NLD. So they will be able to meet me, for example, the former president and his wife, and also the chairman of the National Assembly and others, including some the so-called political activists and some key armed ethnic group. So organization which signed the National Peace Agreement. So I think that much is clear. And that is a jump start. It's very good. For me, that would be a good success. And if it would be better if they can discuss some ceasefire, maybe ceasefire pause temporarily, just like what happened in Ukraine war, in certain area, so that you can deliver quickly. If people get stuck there, you can help. So I think that is why humanitarian corridor is important. If there is certain progress on this front, I think that will be a big success. But the biggest success is to establish a framework, follow the ASEAN 5-point consensus, so that you can have a timeline to proceed, because this thing will not finish in weeks and months. It takes time. And I think just like the experience in helping Cambodia, you need step by step, start the so-called, I would describe, which ASEAN like to use, building block process. You start from below and slowly, this is why it's slow process, and expand it. ASEAN must start it first and then engage international community. Unlike the crisis in during the Cyclone Nargis, because it's so immediate, it's a life and death, so it come in. And now the fighting, of course, is very serious. So we have to entangle issue by issue. And I think this is, I hope that his visit will produce this kind of result that I envisage. And I hope that when ASEAN leader met with United States will continue its current position that ASEAN is still the main mechanism to help settle, and they must help whatever ASEAN need. Of course, target sanction and certain aspect of Americans' boycott will continue.
Thank you, Kun Kavi. You are not only veteran journalist, but you also a historian of ASEAN, or Wikipedia of ASEAN. Throughout the more than 50 years of ASEAN in existence, what are the lessons learned from the history of ASEAN when it comes to this kind of conflict resolution, peace building? And of course, perhaps it's ASEAN used to have an ASEAN special envoy in the past with regards to conflict resolutions and peace building. The question of Aceh, for instance, or East Timor, and other, regional security flashpoints in Southeast Asia. So what are the lessons learned when it comes to the role of ASEAN in dealing with this kind of situations? And especially, what are the quality? What should be the qualities of the ASEAN Special Envoy?
Well, I think this is a very good question. ASEAN must be independent. ASEAN must not side with anyone. That's the most important. Otherwise, nobody cares. ASEAN. If somebody said ASEAN is pro-Western or pro-other, we finish. At the moment, ASEAN being criticized because it's alone. That is why the side that has associated with those, they criticize us. You have to act more like a Western country. No, ASEAN is ASEAN. ASEAN engagement is different because ASEAN engaged slowly to make sure that the solution is durable. This is why I'm very happy you articulate my view into 4C. That contains the most important element, the communication and consistency. So I think the ability of the special envoy to communicate with the conflicting party will be one of the key. And already you have that at the top. For good or for worse, Hun Sen opened up the discussion among the top leader. For me, that's how I look at it, call each other, talk more, otherwise you meet once a year, very protocol-like, you see. And luckily this year, because ASEAN member have to host ASEAN-related summit G20 in Indonesia and also Thailand on the APEC summit. So there's a lot of activity among leaders. So it's good to have ASEAN leader to talk about the serious issue is not only Myanmar, is sustainable development, how we can recover together, speedier, how we open up safe passage, you know, how we return things to normal. And all these issues, Cambodia, amazingly, it's not that I'm trying to defend Cambodia. Cambodia is imperfect, has a lot of challenges, but Cambodia has done well on the, for example, on the COVID-19, is have now almost 100% vaccine nations and open up the country, the first to do so. You know, everybody was so surprised because Cambodia has faced so many challenges. Actually, Cambodia was considered the worst country among ASEAN in the past, but now it's not. Now it's very well structured because of the lesson learned, engaging with international organization throughout this year. I remember I cover Cambodian. I have seen Cambodian progress on the day-to-day basis, you know. And I have to tell you, I met my wife in Cambodia, so that's one of the things that why Cambodia is so close to me every day.
Thank you, Kun Kavi. That is very wonderful memory and experience. Cambodia is the place that you meet your soulmate here, and we're very grateful for your support and your optimistic views on Cambodia as a chair of ASEAN this year. One last questions relating to it's a broader question here. So you mentioned that for ASEAN to survive and thrive and prosper, it needs to stay independent. I think the word independent and the word neutrality can be different. Sometimes we independent, but it's not necessarily absolutely neutral, because independent also based on the core principles that we believe in, such as international law, rule-based international order. So we need to take stand and we need to take position when something seriously or gravely violates the principle of international law. Non-interference principle and the ASEAN Charter that inscribed in ASEAN Charter and Treaty of Amity Incorporations. So that is the ambition perhaps of ASEAN to be a normative power, so ASEAN can promote its norms, promote its core principles, and socialize major power based on this principle, so that ASEAN can stay independent, but not necessarily neutral.
Very good point.
I would like to seek your views on this, the future of ASEAN.
I fully agree with your assessment, and that is why I emphasize on the word independent. I'm glad you mentioned Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, because this will be the main driving force, the core of the regional architecture in the future. Of course, people talk about Indo-Pacific, ASEAN Indo-Pacific. The core is TAC, Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. And please notice carefully, Treaty of Amity Cooperation is going to be a big mechanism in the future. Now you have more countries in the world, almost 1/4 of UN members have acceded to the Treaty of Amity. You know, the latest in Cambodia, 6 more countries will adhere, will sign. And what is interesting is that more and more Middle East countries are acceded to the Treaty of Amity. And you know, Middle East country has been synonymous with conflicting area. Now they see that, oh, ASEAN has a very good mechanism to settle all this principle of the non-use of force, consensus, no interference, and all this. So I think this principle, of course, is still take time. And I think in the future, Treaty of Amity will have more signatory, and then slowly it will have some form of legal obligation, because it started out so well without any obligation. It's a voluntary. So if you have people respect us, our independent, and said that, hey, oh, ASEAN is great, ASEAN is weak, ASEAN has no enemy, you know, we don't have enemy. People want to use ASEAN as a platform, but we never allow major power to use as a pawn. So we want them to cooperate. when they come to ASEAN, there must be a special place where major power leave their anger behind, come and sit down and talk and cooperate each other, because we provide that kind of atmosphere. And I think I must tell you, not because I'm siding with ASEAN. ASEAN is a good place for major power to come, because we are a safe place, and now we are the country that enjoy dynamic growth. And you can see now the trend after what happened in Europe at the moment, the money, investment, and a lot of things will move eastward. Chheang.
Thank you, Kun Kavi. One last thing, because you are the close friend of late Surin Phitsawan, and you could read his mind and his ideas and wisdom. So if we have a conversation with the late Surin Phitsawan today with regards to a Myanmar crisis, what do you think he would say to us, to ASEAN, and to individual member ASEAN?
Oh, I think Dr. Surin Phitsawan will say one word, we have to do our homework and prove it. So that's it. Surin Phitsawan is man of action. He always want to go out and engage the world so much that some of the ASEAN member were not very happy, because as the ASEAN Secretary General, you should stay at the ASEAN Secretariat office. But he wanted, and he always emphasized that we have to do our homework so that we are ready to act and respond. And that is the way that ASEAN can survive. When you do your homework, means you have to understand the issue. And if you understand the issue, ASEAN is one big, he always used the word, one big less problem for the world. At the moment, actually, I would turn his word around. I think ASEAN stability and prosperity is biggest asset for peace in the world.
Thank you very much, Kun Kavi. With that positive and inspiring notes, and I would like to thank the audience, the viewers on our Facebook's live for your attention, for your engagement with this public lecture series. And I would like to call to the conclude of this very impressive public lectures by Kun Kavi. He's a veteran journalist from the Bangkok Post, and also a very respected geopolitical analyst of the Asia Pacific region and the Asia, and beyond. And I believe that his views and insights today will help you to understand better and deeper the current situation in Myanmar, the peace prospects, and the role of ASEAN in general, and the role of Cambodia as a chair of ASEAN this year. So thank you once again, and we're looking forward to welcoming you to our fourth public lecture series of the Think Tank 2022. Thank you very much, Kun Kavi. Stay safe and sound. Hope to catch up with you again soon. Thank you very much.
All Kun Jaran.
All Kun.